We're back again for what has become a triple header, unprecedented, and I am delighted to welcome to the show a gentleman who has quickly become one of my very favorite guests, my good friend Larry Klayman. Larry, how you doing?
Thank you, Jason. It's mutual.
Lovely to see you, Larry.
So you're welcome.
You've always got great insights for us, and there is so much going on and about to happen. Of course, the Inspector General report was leaked yesterday, and you have called it a predictably weak Inspector General report. What can you tell us about your predictions and why you have considered it weak?
That's right, Jason. That's why we need a special prosecutor. It's why I volunteered to be that special prosecutor. If I will be named by President Trump, and he should do that, he should override Jeff Sessions, who's worthless, and the corrupt Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. But it's predictable. The Inspector General is part of the Department of Justice. So they're not going to go hard against Comey. They're not going to go hard against anybody, including Brennan, Clapper, anybody. So this is the reality that we face. The leak that came out, and you got to believe it's probably the strongest stuff in that report, is that James Comey, former FBI director, was simply insubordinate. Well, that's not a crime. A lot of people are insubordinate. I've been insubordinate. When I worked for the Justice Department, when my chief told me to do something that was stupid, I told him I'll do it the way I think it should be done, ethically and legally. Right. You know, so this is not a real bona fide report. This is a cover-up by the Inspector General, David Horowitz. And as I've said about Mueller, you know, everybody said he's a man of great integrity. You know, when the establishment says that, look out. So when they start praising Horowitz, it simply means that these young commentators and others don't know what they're talking about, and they're just parroting the line in Washington, D.C. Horowitz, even if he was a man of integrity, even if he was tough, he doesn't have the tools to bring Comey and the other criminals to justice.
What do you mean by that? Why does he not have the tools? Doesn't he have the full power of the Department of Justice? Or I mean,
no.
That's the problem. Department of Justice inspecting itself.
He has 500 people working for him, but those people basically are like researchers. They write reports. They interview people. He doesn't have prosecutorial powers. It has to then go to a U.S. attorney, you know, among the various districts and circuits, or it has to go to the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, and they're not going to do anything here. So that's why this is basically just an academic exercise for Michael Horowitz and the Inspector General to do something. Now, I've gone to Horowitz myself with regard to Mueller and the illegal criminal grand jury leaks. What's he doing about that? Nothing. I'm in court fighting that. In fact, we got Judge Emmett Sullivan, a independent-minded Democrat-appointed judge, believe it or not, to order production of communications between the media and Mueller. I believe that will knock Mueller out. I believe that it's going to show grand jury leaks, which are criminal.
Right.
And why did we have to do that? Why isn't it the Inspector General to do it? I asked the Inspector General to investigate the prosecutorial misconduct in the Clive and Bundy prosecution. He's done nothing. He's a tool of the establishment. And it just lets the steam off, Jason. In other words, it makes it appear that something's happening when it's really not happening at all.
Right. It seemed to me, and obviously I don't have any kind of legal expertise, but it seemed like they're maybe setting up Comey to be, or McCabe or someone, to be the fall guy, blame it all on one person, put him in jail or whatever, and consider it done. Any chance that's going to happen?
You're two-thirds right. Yeah, I mean, they will blame it on fall guys like Andrew McCabe, like James Comey, like James Baker, former general counsel to Comey, and all these people deserve it. You know, they've acted in a criminal fashion, but they're not the higher-ups. The higher-ups go off scot-free. And who's the higher-up here? Barack Hussein Obama. Right. He's the one that sat on top of this. Attorney General Loretta Lynch under him. Before that, Eric Holder, who's now going to run for president, believe it or not. Yeah. So these are the people that walk off, typically. Now, nobody's going to get indicted here. Comey won't get indicted. McCabe won't get indicted. James Baker, former general counsel of the FBI, won't be indicted. This completely worthless current director, who's like a child, Christopher Wray, I mean, he just sits there like a placebo doing nothing.
Yeah.
And, you know, and this is the world we live in today. And it's why the country is going to face a stark choice very shortly. It's going to get to the point where the people either rise up and take matters into their own legal hands, and I don't advocate violence, or they can watch this dual system of justice march on. and it's destroying this country as we speak. And the president is being victimized. People around her are being victimized. Now we've got Robert Mueller demanding that witnesses and others turn over their cell phones. I mean, it's like we live in Nazi Germany. I was watching Schindler's List last week. Excuse me. Yesterday evening, it reminded me of what we're going through now. These people are Nazis.
I mean, the tactics are pretty draconian. There was this clip with Sean Hannity either earlier today or last night where he's talking about the seizure of the cell phones. Let me just play that real quick.
One more reason the Inspector General's report should have been released by now. And meanwhile, as the Mueller witch hunt churns on, the special counsel, this is interesting. They are demanding that witnesses turn in their phones so Team Mueller, and of course his pit bull, Andrew Weissman, and Jeannie Ray, who worked for Clinton, get to review all of their electronic communications. He wants the phones turned over, even texts that are on what are called encrypted apps like WhatsApp or Signal or one of these things. Now, maybe Mueller's witnesses, I don't know. If I advised them to follow Hillary Clinton's lead, delete all your emails, and then acid wash the emails and hard drives on the phones, then take your phones and bash them with a hammer into little itsy bitsy pieces, use bleach bit, remove the SIM cards, and then take the pieces and hand it over to Robert Mueller and say,
that's what Hillary did, of course. She destroyed the evidence. This is really unprecedented, isn't it, Larry?
Of course, Hannity's being facetious there. You know, he's saying, if it's good enough for Hillary, it's good enough for them.
Right.
But he didn't mean to destroy evidence. I know that.
Right.
And the reality is here, Jason, is that this is something that you can get away with if you're Hillary Clinton. You can get away with this if you're James Comey, if you're John Brennan, former CIA director, James Clapper, former director of national intelligence, if you're Barack Hussein Obama. You can get away with it. Or if you're Susan Rice, who now sits on the board of Netflix, believe it or not,
unbelievable,
you can get away with it. You know, Netflix now has a deal with Obama. You know, you get away with it because the media and the entertainment industry are behind you, and nothing's going to happen to you. And Hillary Clinton's sitting there, you know, is happier than a pig and you know what, and she knows she'll never be held accountable. And that's why the American people are rising up, and that's why they're so fed up. And although I'm not the biggest fan of Hannity from a personal standpoint, I agree with what he says. I always liked Alan Combs better, his partner. But Hannity, you know, is telling it like it is, and I commend him for that.
You know, Larry, these guys, they're brazen, you know. We've got James Comey going out on a book tour. We've got Bill Clinton on his book tour. Of course, many people have seen that Laura Loomer and I went to visit Mr. Clinton at his Barnes & Noble book signing just the other day.
Thank you.
I had to ask him what he knew about Imran.
Pleasure to meet you, sir. We have a mutual acquaintance in Chris Gowan.
Yeah.
He's representing Imran Awan tomorrow at a hearing, and I presented evidence to the U.S. Capitol Police that Imran was hacking Congress, and they gave it right to Chris.
I don't know anything about that.
Thanks for being here. There's a link to that on your photo.
He doesn't know anything about it. Nothing about it, Larry. Now, I know you haven't been directly involved in the Awan case, but give me some insight. If I, or rather Laurel Everly, as a civilian, have evidence in a crime, we don't know what to do with it. We bring it to the police, in this case, the U.S. Capitol Police. This was a laptop that Laurel had. She was renting a home from Imran Awan at 4809 Sprayer Street, and we've found evidence that Imran had a locked shed, a high-speed internet account. He's been accused of warehousing stolen congressional data, and Laurel's laptop went missing for 3 days. Imran had the keys to the house. He was the landlord. He came by 2 or 3 times a week. The laptop mysteriously came back sitting on her bed 3 days later. We brought it to the Capitol Police. They brought it right to the defense attorney and did an, inadvertent disclosure. How does that happen, and what are the implications of that?
I don't know. I mean, I've seen Pink Panther movies with Inspector Clouseau. I mean, maybe they need to audition for the next sequel. I don't know. It's incompetent, obviously, or it's corrupt. Right. Who knows whether they were paid off or not? I don't know. There are some very, very powerful forces out there, particularly, you know, in the Muslim world here, that I'm not making any accusations, by the way, but it needs to be looked at to see why something like that would happen. It's just bizarre.
Yeah, because we were originally supposed to be at a progress hearing today in Washington, D.C. I think the judge is Chutkan. Do you know her?
Yeah, God forbid.
She's the judge.
She's an Obama special. I mean, she's
Right.
a piece of work, believe me.
Right. So
Don't expect much.
That progress hearing was canceled, and now it's been rescheduled for July 3rd, and it's going to be now a plea hearing. So people are speculating that Imran's going to be let go, or people who with a more positive outlook are feeling like he's going to rat out Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Can you draw any speculative conclusions from that information?
Well, like I was saying, with that judge, don't expect much of anything. I mean, she's a political hack, like many of the Obama appointees on that court. I've had her in cases. I've had her in Freedom of Information Act cases and other cases. And it's another example of why the way we choose judges needs to be reformed on both sides, whether it's conservative or left-leaning judges, that they're highly politicized. So, it'll be another example, Jason, I hate to be cynical, of someone walking off without the appropriate punishment. And this guy, Imran, obviously is somebody who potentially could have been very detrimental to U.S. national security. We don't know the full story yet. I mean, he had access to all this stuff, classified stuff in Congress. And of course, if Hillary Clinton can get away with it and other people can get away with it, perhaps he can too.
Right. Thomas Paine of True Pundit has speculated that a strong possibility exists that someone from Gowan, well, it used to be Gowan, Rhodes, Winograd, and Silva. I found out this morning Mr. Rhodes is no longer there, but Thomas Paine speculated that they may have intervened somehow, that there's possibly no way for the Capitol Police to have even known to bring it to them without them getting involved. And of course, they're watching my live streams. They would have known that I brought this evidence with Laurel Everly, or rather I should say, I drove Laurel Everly to the U.S. Capitol Police and she provided the evidence. Is that a possibility?
It is, and maybe there's a logical reason for this. Maybe the Capitol Police feels that somehow they're vulnerable for having allowed this guy to exist on Capitol Hill for so long without doing a proper investigation, without taking any action. And it could be that this is part of a cover-up to cover their rear end in terms of their incompetence.
Wow.
So anything's possible.
Definitely shocking. And the other thing I was looking at on True Pundit earlier today is that, they've just announced that the full Inspector General report will be released, I think on the 14th, they said? Yeah, June 14th. But of course, you don't expect to see much more there.
Well, if all that's been leaked so far is that Comey was insubordinate and that Loretta Lynch, former Attorney General under Barack Obama, pulled some maneuvers or whatever on a tarmac, I don't suspect much more is going to come out that's going to be terribly damning. And again, these people don't implicate themselves. I mean, there by the grace of God go thee. There's a certain protocol that you don't push too hard. And the Justice Department, of which I'm an alumnus, of which I once was a proud alumnus, although I did see politics there, left and ultimately founded Judicial Watch and later Freedom Watch, they protect each other. And this is what's really frightening about our justice system today. The Department of Justice has become the Department of Injustice and Corruption. And sitting on top of that is an Attorney General who's not just afraid of his shadow, but in my view, himself is committing criminal acts by not undertaking to fulfill his oath of office. I believe that Jeff Sessions, frankly, should be put before a grand jury and indicted for subverting justice. He's in effect obstructing justice. The president should fire him. Apparently, the president's gotten bad advice in that regard, and this guy continues on as a worthless Attorney General, doing only stuff with regard to immigration, but burying his head in the sand, but for major crimes that have been committed against the people of this country.
Right. And I do want to remind people that they should go to freedomwatchusa.org and they should sign the petition to remove Robert Mueller and to appoint Larry as a new special counsel to investigate the insane crimes that appear to be going on at the Department of Justice. And for people who are just joining us, you can follow Larry Klayman on Twitter. He is at Larry E. Klayman, and he's the founder, of course, of Freedom Watch USA and Judicial Watch. Larry has brought a FOIA lawsuit to try to gain access to the communications between Robert Mueller's special counsel office and the press. Maybe we should reiterate that, Larry, how these leaks to the press of the grand jury information are potentially criminal.
That's right. Every day we get one or more grand jury leaks from Robert Mueller and his ultra-leftist, compromised, conflicted prosecutorial staff, led by the very corrupt Andrew Weissman, who has gotten himself into a lot of trouble in the past with phony indictments and prosecutions. Now, Judge Emmett Sullivan, I like to say good things about people, Jason, when I can. Mm-hmm. And when you have a Clinton-appointed Democrat judge order that by September 4th, all these communications with the media by Robert Mueller have to be produced, frankly, let's take our hat off to Judge Sullivan. I don't call everybody a political hack. This is a good man. He's swimming upstream against his party right now. And we got as good a ruling as we could have gotten. And this could break Mueller's back legally. And I believe that it will. And we're not going to give up till that happens. We've got other lawsuits to remove Mueller, too. You can see that at freedomwatchusa.org. But unfortunately, the president has had bad legal representation. And while I'm pleased that Rudy Giuliani is now playing a role, I mean, he's kind of out of control. I mean, just yesterday he suggested that Kim Jong-un got down on his knees begging for
that was terrible.
In Singapore. I mean, is he trying to kill the summit by humiliating this guy? I mean, I don't know what he's drinking over there, but perhaps, I mean, Israeli wine is pretty good, but apparently he's had a few too many bottles.
Yeah, it's true. Rudy Giuliani's temperament seems to have changed substantially since he was the mayor of New York City. He always seemed like a fairly sober and serious guy. And I mean, the last several times I've seen him on television, he's been nothing short of absolutely crazy. This is a lucky find on Google Images right here. This is basically Rudy Giuliani now, and he seems to be using the same makeup artist as President Trump. His hands are vastly different color than his face. So I don't know what's going on.
I think you may be missing a few marbles when you laugh at your jokes before you even make them, and he seems to do that regularly. I mean, I like him as a person. I know Rudy Giuliani, but I don't know. I think his time has come and gone. He's not serving the president terribly well right now.
Yeah. That seems to be something that's going around quite a bit. There was one other thing I forgot to ask you about because, earlier this morning, as I canceled my Amtrak train, and I don't know if you knew this, Larry, but Amtrak has changed their policy. You can no longer cancel a train ticket without financial penalty. So I think Chris Gowan might be continually delaying this Imran Awan hearing to drain me $50 at a time. But I actually spoke to Chris Gowan this morning, and you might recall my previous conversation with him on the street outside the Pretty Man courthouse, where he told me that he was in charge of delivering Diet Coke to President Clinton when he worked in the Clinton Foundation. But during this phone conversation,
there's some humor to that because actually I was talking to Jennifer Flowers this morning, my friend, and I'm also, I help her legally. Right. From time to time. She's going to come on our radio show Sunday and talk about the latest Clinton outrages. But her former husband, Fina Shilna, told me that, Clinton was heavy into cocaine. And I knew that. We're not talking about Diet Coke. We're talking about cocaine.
Hey,
and that may be why he looks so bad these days. Maybe he has the after effects of years of snorting cocaine, which he used to do in the White House theater while he was president. With Marcia Scott, by the way, according to Secret Service agents, who apparently enjoyed a relationship with both of the Clintons. But he's a bizarre individual, and I feel sorry for him in a way because he looks like he's about ready to die at any moment. And maybe it wasn't exactly Diet Coke that he was imbibing himself with.
Well, the thing that was most confusing to me about this conversation with Mr. Gowan, other than the fact that he had basically none of the details straight and was, quite clearly improvising and making up lies as he went along, two occasions during the phone call, he attempted to lure me into a wager for $1,000 based on the outcome of the trial or whatever. Isn't it totally illegal for a lawyer to invite me to do an interstate bet for $1,000?
I don't know if it's illegal. I mean, selling evidence might be a problem.
That was the other thing he did.
But I don't know that it's illegal. It's just totally inappropriate and unethical for a lawyer to do that. I mean, much like, when Michael Jordan or whoever it was, or Pete Rose bet on his own team, I don't think it's kosher, so to speak, to do that. It's not ethical.
Oh, he was right. He was betting me that Imran had an Uber account, which is not at all what I was even asking him. He had told Judge Chutkan that Imran needed to remove his GPS bracelet because he was so destitute that he needed to drive for Uber to support his family. And of course, that leads me to the question of how can he possibly afford to pay for legal defense from Gowan, Winograd, and Silva if he's not able to drive for Uber. But
well, there may be people behind that are paying for it, in their interest. That's the way it works frequently, unfortunately.
Yeah, very much so. The other person I was speaking to earlier today, it's been like a Larry doubleheader because we had, of course, Larry Nichols earlier, and he told me, I didn't know this, you guys are acquainted, is that correct?
Well, I know him. I was never good friends, but, we were pursuing Bill Clinton, and a lot of his knowledge and observation came up about what went on in Arkansas with the state troopers and everything else. Mm-hmm. And I did travel to Little Rock during my days at Judicial Watch, and I had actually security when I went. It's a wild, wild west kind of place. So Larry Nichols can tell you all about the way Little Rock, Arkansas worked, at least while the Clintons were in power. Yeah,
he's told me quite a bit, and it's fascinating to say the least. I mean, there's no shortage of criminal accusations. How come nothing has happened with Mr. Nichols' testimony? It seems like he's got some pretty damning information about the Clintons.
Well, because you had somebody by the name of Ken Starr investigating things that were out there.
Right.
And Ken Starr is a very good appellate lawyer. He's an establishment figure. He was former judge for the Circuit Court in Washington, D.C. He coveted becoming Supreme Court justice someday. He blew that. But he lives in a different world. I saw him interviewed recently by, I think it was maybe, I don't know if it was Chris Wallace or somebody. Oh, excuse me, it was Cavuto on Fox News. And he was the independent counsel at the time. And he was so timid, and he was so out of his league. He just could not in any way take on David Kendall, Williams and Conley, and the Clinton lawyers, and they chewed him up and spit him out. And he lost the ability to become Supreme Court justice. That's how much he was discredited. The poor guy just simply didn't have it. And, Larry Nichols and people like that, he didn't give them any credence. I had hundreds of thousands of documents that we'd obtained at Judicial Watch, and I offered them up to Starr. He never took them because he never wanted to seem like he was too close to a conservative lawyer that people used to call Starr's fellow traveler. That was me. But I never, ever coordinated with him. But I tried to help him. And it's why he fell flat on his face, in part, because he simply was living in another world, his fantasy world.
Yeah, he just wasn't really able to get much of anything done, wasn't he? I mean, he was investigating Whitewater. He was investigating all kinds of different stuff. Vince
well,
Foster.
The thing that his first downfall was he was put in to investigate the death of Vince Foster,
right?
Who was Hillary's partner at the Rose Law Firm, who came to Washington, D.C. He became deputy counsel in the White House. Hillary's office was located right next to his. It was rumored, and most likely, that they had an affair. It may have been Hillary's last heterosexual encounter. Seriously, I don't mean that facetiously. I mean, she basically doesn't deal with men anymore. Everybody knows that. The left knows that. And Foster did a lot of things for her, covered up her tax problems, covered up other things. And it was Linda Tripp who told me that Foster had given a speech at Harvard shortly before he died, saying, when you lose your reputation, you've lost everything. He was the only person that Linda Tripp and some others felt had any ethics in the White House. So the big question was he killed or did he commit suicide? I believe he was hit, and I think that Hillary Clinton was behind it through intermediaries. And Starr covered that up. And there was no logical explanation why he would kill himself. In fact, my barber gave him a haircut just a day before he killed himself, and the barber told me he was in quite a good mood. So, who knows? That was Ken Starr. I mean, Ken Starr didn't want to wade in too heavily because he wanted to be Supreme Court Justice.
Right. And while we're talking about this infamous Clinton body count, there's someone else who's come to my attention fairly recently, and that's a gentleman by the name of John Glasgow. John was the chief financial officer of CDI, which is a construction contractor in Little Rock that built the Bill Clinton Presidential Library. And Charles Ortel and I did a special episode about the strange death of John Glasgow, and Charles gave an incredibly in-depth report about some of the financial anomalies going down to the specific dollar amounts where, $11,967,040 or whatever was missing from here, and then it came back from over here. It just seemed like a number that couldn't be coincidental. And John Glasgow has a brother named Roger, who is an attorney in Little Rock. And in 1976 or 1972, he was running for Deputy Attorney General of Arkansas. And he did not succeed in that run because he had been arrested driving his car back over the border from Mexico into the United States and was caught with 24 pounds of marijuana in his car. But he was able to, because he's a lawyer, able to defend himself and prove that that marijuana was planted in the car. Caused me to believe that these Glasgow brothers might be, as Vince Foster was, men of ethics and honor, which is a very dangerous characteristic if you're going to hang out with the Clintons.
Obviously. 80 people plus perished during the Clinton administration. Many of them were material witnesses and others. 80 people died. Now, Linda Tripp, and I had two whistleblowers I represented inside of the Office of Administration of the White House who revealed the first Clinton email scandal, where 1 million emails dealing with all kinds of scandals were withheld from Ken Starr, from Congress, from me at Judicial Watch at the time. They all had lists of dead people, the 80 people left on their chair as a warning to them.
Wow.
Now, either the people in and around Clinton and the Clintons themselves killed some of these people or had them hit, or they wanted Linda Tripp and these whistleblowers to think that they had killed people to shut them up. Now, I always said 80 people dying, by the law of averages, maybe they didn't have all 80 hit, but some of them they probably did. And Hillary's a heartless witch. She has no respect for human life. She wouldn't have used a private email server giving up the coordinates of Ambassador Chris Stevens, which resulted in the deaths of my client's sons, Sean Smith and Ty Woods, if she had any heart. She has no heart. And it's completely conceivable that she had people arrange to hit these people to protect her husband and protect herself because she had these ambitions to become president. I think the woman is capable of anything. And I do believe that she had people hit.
Yeah. There's so many strange circumstances that surround so many of these deaths. Ron Brown, of course, stands out. Vince Foster, as we've discussed, had dried blood running in 4 different directions on his face. I mean, things that absolutely just defy forensics and gravity and physics. And I also spoke with Larry Nichols about how the Clintons had a very special relationship with the coroner there in Arkansas. And, as people, myself at least, as we are shifting away from getting all of our information from the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, and we can get some of these alternative sources from the internet, we're learning about the power of the coroner's office. And if you can control that coroner, you really can get away with murder.
Well, that's correct. Look at Andrew Breitbart. I don't know what happened to him. He mysteriously died. I was with him the morning before he died. And mysteriously, the coroner died shortly after him. I mean, did they poison him? Did something happen to him? I don't know. Maybe it was natural causes. Who knows? But there never was a valid investigation. And Andrew May, his soul rest in peace, was a real hero. He was fearless.
Yeah.
And when he ran Breitbart, it was not as big as it is today, but it was extremely successful. So there are people like that who have just perished.
Yeah.
And there is a real fear out there of people being hit. I once took the deposition of Harold Ickes. He was deputy White House counsel for the Clintons.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, Harold, first of all, I asked him what his name was, and he said he forgot. He's bobbing around, like some mafia character.
How could
and
he
then
forget?
I said to him, then I said to him, it's all in video, by the way, and I said to him, you were the lawyer of the restaurant workers in New York City before you were White House counsel, weren't you? And he says, I don't know, I forgot. Well, he was. And I said, did you ever ask, the restaurant workers, I said, is basically tied in with the mafia. I said, you ever ask for favors? And I was implying, what we're talking about. And he literally jumped over the table at me. It's on video. Judicial Watch still has the videos. I'm trying to get the video. I'm not exactly friendly with Fitton and the other people there. And under my severance agreement, I believe I'm entitled to those. I like the American people to see this stuff. And they buried it. Fitton doesn't want to have anybody see it because it would show that he was simply my paralegal at the time. But they sitting there next to me. But people need to see this because it's kind of like a time capsule of the corruption of the Clintons, which has gotten worse as years went on with regard to their corrupt foundation and with regard to the way Barack Obama did things, which was equally corrupt to them.
No, wait a minute. Am I showing the right guy here, Larry? Is this him?
That's Harold, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if that is Harold or not. That's his dad, I think.
Ah, okay.
His dad was Secretary of Labor under Franklin Roosevelt.
Yes.
But Harold Ickes is somebody who's considered to be the closest individual to Hillary Clinton. He was called her consigliere.
Yeah.
The carries out whatever needs to be done. And during the last election, Ickes was involved. And he is a real piece of work, Harold Ickes. And I'm not saying that he put a hit out on anybody. I'm not saying that he did anything improper, but Harold Ickes did have mafia connections, and when I asked him that question, he jumped over the table at me. But I'll tell you something, somebody arranged for hits for Hillary Clinton, I do believe.
Right.
And it's never been investigated, and this gets back to Jeff Sessions, is that he's letting the Clintons go free. And the mess that they've made, the number of crimes that they've committed is a stark example, as Hannity says and as I say, of this dual system of justice where if you're just an ordinary person and you do something wrong, they're going to put you away. But if you're Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, or even the higher-ups like Paul Ryan or whoever else on the Republican side, you'll just walk off scot-free. I'm not saying Ryan has done anything illegal. I think he's basically just a two-faced twit. But but if you are at that level, you're untouchable in our country.
But it is interesting, Larry, how, we've got Harold Ickes and then, Harold Ickes Jr. They like to keep these things in the family, don't they?
Well, they do. And Harold Ickes, he did not all he's done in his career. The younger Harold Ickes was bad. He was in the civil rights movement. He was beaten up, I think, in Selma, Alabama. He lost a kidney, etc. But along the way, he got corrupted. And this is part and parcel to the people in and around the Clintons. The Clintons wanted people that they could manipulate. They wanted sleazeballs like George Stephanopoulos, like James Carville, like others who did a number, by the way, on Jennifer Flowers and my other clients, the Clinton women. They were the war room that destroyed these women. Talk about the Me Too movement.
Right.
They should be focusing on these individuals. But this is the way our country is going, and these people get away with it. And they kind of sliver around Washington under the surface, and they continue to exist, and they're not held accountable. And that's why I want to be special counsel, because these people need to be put before a grand jury, indicted, tried and convicted, and they need to be put in prison with the key thrown away. If for nothing other than to set an example for future generations.
Absolutely.
That without ethics, morality, and religion, as our second American president, John Adams, said when he was a founding father, before he signed the Declaration, if you don't have that, we're not going to have a lasting liberty.
That's very true. And Larry, has there been any progress, are you able to tell, with this bid to become the new special counsel? Is there any way to gauge how that's going?
Well, you can look at the signatures on our website. They're approaching 25,000. We want hundreds of thousands. But the thing that's blocking it right now is Sessions or Rosenstein. They would have to appoint me. That's why I've said, communicate with the president, write to the White House, send texts, send emails, send letters. Tell him, meet with Larry Klayman, President Trump. You know, I wish him the best, and I wish his counsel the best, but they haven't really been representing him in a tough enough way, and he's getting bad advice. And the poor guy, you know, is just beaten up every single day. His daughter, Ivanka, the same. His son-in-law, Jared Kushner, others around him. And he has a hard enough time focusing on affairs of state than whether he should be appointing Larry Klayman special counsel. But the time will come that he'll need to do that. And I really love this president. I think he's the best president of my lifetime, and I love Ronald Reagan because he tells it like he sees it. He doesn't sugarcoat, and he realizes that what we're dealing in Washington is pure slime, and these people need to be dealt with in a very strong way. It's no longer time for the Bushes or the Clintons or the Obamas who think that they're better than the rest of us. We need to get down at ground level, and President Trump is willing to get down at ground level, and I am too. I'm willing to get cut, in other words. I remember, Jason, if I may say, I went to a conference with Justice Clarence Thomas a number of years ago, and they tried to destroy this poor guy. He's my favorite Supreme Court Justice, Clarence Thomas. And you know, he said, if you stand for anything in Washington, you have to be prepared to pay the price. And I'm prepared to pay the price. And I don't know of anybody else who is. Because in the end, and look at Trey Gowdy, you know, what he said recently about the FBI, you know, acting properly and spying on.
That's crazy.
On the president. Why is Gowdy saying that? Because he's leaving Congress. He's undoubtedly got a partnership with a very big Washington, D.C. law firm that's, you know, is both Democrat and Republican. He wants to maintain that relationship with the FBI. That's how he's going to make money in private practice.
Right.
And, you know, excuse the language, but Trey Gowdy's a whore. And the rest of them are whores too. Not all of them. But Trey Gowdy is a whore. And I wrote the book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment.
Right.
He's a prime example. Paul Ryan, just days after that, said the same thing. He's a whore too. He's leaving. You can expect him to be with a very big law firm as well, raking in the money. They don't put the American people first. They put their own financial and other interests first. And that's why this country is sinking fast.
It's really unbelievable what these two have done. I mean, to take the side of an obviously corrupt investigation. I mean, so many things have been done just obviously incorrectly in terms of what Hannity was talking about with the phones. Has anything more happened with Michael Cohen? What are we going to see happen there? Didn't they say there were all kinds of documents they found that were attorney-client privilege documents?
Yeah, I mean, let me say this about Michael Cohen and the others. I don't know whether these people committed crimes or not. Okay, I'm not going to vouch for them. Michael Cohen and some of the others, Manafort, Gates, others. But just like in the O.J. Simpson case,
right,
when the police go out to the scene of the crime and start spreading around blood to make sure that somebody's going to be convicted, I don't care if it's O.J. Simpson or Michael Cohen, is that these investigations and indictments should be quashed and dismissed. And Mueller has no authority, none, to go after Michael Cohen for collateral things that don't involve Russian collusion and alleged obstruction of justice in the firing of Comey. And for that reason, the president, I said it last week, should pardon all these people right up front. And if necessary, keep it in reserve and pardon yourself. Because you've got a highly corrupt special counsel here that wants to do a number on the president and the people around him. He's exceeded his authority. You have a worthless, corrupt attorney general and deputy attorney general. The president and Michael Cohen and others are left defenseless. And I don't care if they committed crimes or not. When the government acts this way, you have to throw out grand jury investigations and indictments. It's the only way you can do it to prevent this government overreach and abuse.
It's amazing to me that people are not more upset about this. I mean, obviously there's a large group of people in the country who are unhappy that Donald Trump is the president. And so anything bad that happens to him, no matter how illegal it is, no matter how dangerous it is to everyone else's rights. I mean, if a billionaire who is also the president of the United States can have his rights violated, what would stop the legal system from just picking up any regular person and sticking them in jail and having no defense whatsoever?
No, they can crush you. You know the movie I might have mentioned it on a prior show, Jason, Take the Money and Run by Woody Allen. It was one of his first movies.
One of his best as well.
Yeah, Woody Allen's a brilliant guy. I mean, and I also think he was falsely accused by people of doing what he did. Recently, one of his sons came forward to say that.
Yeah.
But Woody Allen had a scene in there where the character Fielding Mellish, I remember, would always be picked upon by bullies, okay? And they'd take his glasses off and step on him. And it got to the point where when Fielding Mellish saw the bullies coming in his direction, he put his own glasses down on the ground and stepped on them before they got there.
Right.
And that's where we are today, in our justice system. These people who are under Mueller's investigation that turned over their cell phones, I urge any of them that haven't turned them over yet to contact me. I'll represent you free of charge, because it's so outrageous. I don't care what they may have done, that Mueller would use this tremendous federal power to coerce them into turning over their cell phones with WhatsApp and everything else on them. And there's no guarantee that Mueller actually looked at just the things that he was worried about, was witness tampering. They could get into other things about these people. It's a violation of Fourth Amendment rights to coerce them into doing that. And Mueller has been given such power by the corrupt Attorney General Sessions and Rod Rosenstein. These people just rolled over to him, like Fielding Mellish did when he put his glasses on the ground and crushed them before the bullies would get there.
Right.
I mean, this is the state we live in today, where our federal government, and we know what happened to the Bundys, and they escaped by the grace of God. But the average American citizen can be crushed by the federal and even state governments whenever those governments so decide. We live in a tyrannical country today, which is about ready to explode.
Yeah, it's very disconcerting. I'm looking for the scene, but I'm unable to find it, where Woody Allen is doing his office workout in the Take the Money Run. He's playing basketball at his desk, if you recall. Was that Take the Money and Run?
Yeah, there was another funny scene in there where he goes in to rob a bank.
Right.
And he gives the teller a note, says,
a gun.
put your hands up, I have a gun. And the teller couldn't read it.
Yeah.
And she said, well, it really says gub. He says, no, it says gun. And by the time they worked it out, he was arrested.
Right.
Thrown in solitary confinement later with the worst of all possible people, an insurance salesman. So,
but just getting back
insane,
to the offer that you've made to provide a legal defense for individuals who are being pressured to turn over their personal devices, I do want to remind everyone that it takes money to run these legal defense, cases, and to do these FOIA cases and everything. So people who are behind Larry in his efforts to do this should consider going to freedomwatchusa.org and donating with this red donate button here, because these lawsuits aren't gonna file themselves, and so we need to support Larry and Freedom Watch, because they're doing the work that apparently no one else is willing to do. What else is going on?
Or for that matter, able to do. My former group, Judicial Watch, gets documents, and that's good, but that's all they do. It's not run by a lawyer. Fitton's not a lawyer, although he seems to try to say that when he's on TV. But you need somebody who's got a trial lawyer experience. I have 40 years. And, we have to take the place of the Justice Department, because we have no Justice Department. So, yes, we do need the financial support. We need the prayers. And we want you to sign up and get our materials, because education is very important. The American people need to understand what's really going on. And I'll say it, and you'll say it, Jason, in an unvarnished way. We don't hold anything back. We tell it like it is. But you don't even get that on Fox News. Everything's sugar-coated. I mean, it's good. I thank God there's a Fox News, but it's not strong enough.
Right. And the other thing, of course, people need to be doing there on freedomwatchusa.org is signing the petition, because we need a special counsel who's going to get something done other than covering up crimes and stealing people's cell phones, which is pretty crazy if you ask me. So, Larry, any updates with the Bundys or any of the other cases that you're working on there at Freedom Watch?
Well, we're proceeding ahead with the case to have the land declared owned by the people of Nevada, which would of course, freeze out the Bureau of Land Management. You know, they're a little bit like Darth Vader. Someday they'll be back. And that's why the Bundys need your support. You can go to cliveandbundydefensefund.org and contribute to that. I'm handling that case and cases in my private capacity. We're looking about doing something about the prosecutorial misconduct. Remember that, again, Attorney General Sessions said he would review it. But just 2 weeks later, he had his prosecutors move for reconsideration of the dismissal of the superseding indictments. I mean, what a two-faced individual Sessions is. So we will be pursuing the prosecutorial misconduct. And the Bundys are a great family. They're a fantastic family. You know them.
Yep.
And they stood up not just for themselves, but the American people against the tyranny of the federal government. And they're continuing to do it. And by the way, Ryan Bundy, who was on my radio show last week, he's running for governor. Although I can't endorse anybody as head of a public interest group, I can do it personally. And I endorse people to support Ryan Bundy to become governor of Nevada. We need more people like that in government.
Absolutely. Ryan Bundy is a brave and intelligent man who is extremely impressive in every way. I had the opportunity to observe him there in court for just a few days, and I haven't been more impressed by an attorney except for when I was able to watch you dealing with Judge Sullivan there. But Ryan did incredible work.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, defending himself
Ryan's
pro
a
se.
natural, Jason. I mean, he's not a lawyer. I told him he should go to law school. He should get a scholarship. He's brilliant. He really is.
Yeah.
And he won that single-handedly. I was behind the scenes because that evil judge Navarro wouldn't let me in, but I was advising him and others, and Klayman and that kind of thing. But Ryan was the one that won that case, and he's a brilliant guy.
Why do you think Trump has not fired Sessions? Is there some reason that we don't understand? Because by all measures, he tweets negative things. He doesn't seem happy, and Trump is certainly not shy about telling people they're fired.
Well, he's worried that, as advice given to him by his attorneys, that if he fires Sessions, that'll be another area for Mueller to investigate in obstruction of justice. Yeah, but he's actually sending a lot of signals these days. And unfortunately, Sessions isn't getting the hint that Sessions should simply resign for the good of the country and also for the good of the presidency. And Sessions does not have that degree of integrity, unfortunately. You know, everybody thinks he's a nice guy. I did too. But nice guys do not subvert the Constitution and the rule of law.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing we should talk about, because obviously you represent many of the women who were victimized by Bill Clinton. What do you think about this ridiculous set of statements he made on NBC that he wouldn't change anything that he did as far as Monica Lewinsky is concerned? Could you imagine if Donald Trump did anything resembling what Bill Clinton did, how quickly he'd be out of there?
No, absolutely. I mean, first of all, he looked like he was about ready to die at any moment. I don't wish him that, but I'm surprised Hillary hasn't killed him yet, actually. But yeah, he just was incomprehensible, and frankly, you know, he's got severe health problems. He doesn't think clearly. As Jennifer Flowers said on Hannity the other night, he's forgotten how to lie well, and it just doesn't come off believable, even in the slightest.
Yeah. The
irony about Bill Clinton, Jason, is that you know, I pursued him and still pursue him and his lovely wife, so to speak. The guy's very intelligent, and he's a very good communicator. You know, I find it interesting to see how he communicates. And I think actually, ironically, there's a lot of similarity between me and him. I mean, he does it in a low-key way. The difference is that he's a liar, right?
Yeah. I
don't believe that I am, but it's really a shame what happened to his presidency, because you know, he could have had a successful president. Instead, you know, he left it with that stench at the end.
Right. And what better to smell a stench with than a big red honker like this? I mean, it seems
Well,
quite.
it's too many years of snorting cocaine. I mean, basically,
Yeah.
you might remember how he was always sniffing, and I'm not making that up. Believe me,
No,
I'm not
I
making it
know.
up.
It's well documented, his years in Arkansas with Dan Lasseter and Don Tyson. A lot of people, I think, don't realize that the DEA investigated Tyson Chicken. And whatever happened with that? There were some people involved with Tyson Chicken that went to jail, didn't they?
Yeah, and I think Hillary, I may not be remembering correctly. I think she bought some
Cattle
chicken futures, yeah, cattle futures or whatever through Tyson, and she made $100,000, I think, on $10 or something to that effect.
I think, yeah, it was $1,000 became 100,000 or 500,000,
Yeah.
and then Stevens was involved.
Right.
That whole thing. So.
Well, I always joke there's no crime that is beneath the Clintons, and when she left office as First Lady, she even tried to steal the White House furniture,
Yeah.
and that was exposed, and she had to bring it back. And then when she left the offices of Secretary of State, she tried it again and also got caught
So
and had to
crazy.
bring it back. It's unbelievable that there's no crime that's beneath them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully we can get some traction with this email investigation. It's been recently revealed on the FBI Vault website that there were in fact 3 federal investigations going on when Hillary was nominated for Democratic candidate for president. That's unbelievable. Has there ever been a presidential candidate before that was under federal investigation times 3?
Well, not that I know of, but who knows how many investigations that the corrupt Robert Mueller has going on right now against Trump.
Right.
But, I have a case, as I mentioned earlier, for the Gold Star parents of Sean Smith and Ty Woods over its wrongful death against Hillary Clinton and defamation in the Benghazi massacre. Our famous hack judge, Amy Berman Jackson, who's got the Manafort prosecutions, dismissed that. I took it up to the D.C. Circuit, very leftist. I had a judge on the panel that actually contributed to Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign in 2008, Patricia Millett. I asked her to get off the case. She wouldn't.
Wow.
Shows you the inherent corruption in the judiciary. And now we're going up to the Supreme Court on this issue as to whether Hillary Clinton had immunity in using the private email server, which gave rise to the coordinates of the ambassador in Benghazi, Chris Stevens, which gave rise to the terrorists finding him and my client's sons and killing them. And it's going to be a very important case. And I hope that the Supreme Court will take it up on certiorari and review that, because whether it's Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State or whether it's other government officials, they hide behind these false claims of immunity and act as if they're above the law. And it's about time that they're held accountable for crimes that they commit in office.
Yeah.
But too often they're protected by the hack judges on the lower courts that they had appointed.
And this goes back to Trey Gowdy to some extent. Of course, he was the head of that congressional committee that was investigating Benghazi, wasn't he? I mean, they didn't really do anything. What was the outcome there?
Well, he took a dive, and Trey Gowdy has a great delivery. I got to tell you, go to our website at freedomwatchusa.org. Watch the press conference we gave for the parents of Extortion 17. That was the biggest loss of life in the Afghan war. They've never gotten an adequate explanation as to why their sons died 3 months after bin Laden was allegedly killed. And Trey Gowdy was on the committee that was supposed to investigate that, and he didn't even have the respect or courtesy to show up for the hearing. Trey Gowdy is a fraud.
Wow.
He's got a great delivery. He sounds very officious, but frankly, there's no real meat behind the hamburger bun, so to speak, of Trey Gowdy.
I'm hearing that a lot more these days, Larry. And see, what I really enjoy about doing Crowdsource the Truth is that, it's very difficult for anyone, and I mean myself included, to know exactly what's going on with all these different players, all these different issues. So, getting the input from experts like yourself and giving the viewing audience the ability to weigh the things that you say, the things that Larry Nichols says, Charles Ortel says, all the guests that we have on, I think is an incredibly valuable resource for helping to try to sort out exactly what is going on. So Larry, when people do go to freedomwatchusa.org, where can they find those videos? I'm in the blog section of the website.
Well, Yeah, I mean, Freedom Watch TV, but I'm also trying to get right now all the videos that I took of the Clinton people when I was running Judicial Watch as its founder. And Fitton doesn't want to release them because he doesn't want to show basically that, he wasn't big man on campus at the time, for lack of a better word. But I have a right to those videos under the severance agreement when I left Judicial Watch. And I want the American people to see them, and I'm in court trying to get them right now because they need to see who the Clintons really are. They need to see the people in and around the Clintons, if nothing else than for posterity, than for history. They were played, on Rivera Live at the time, Geraldo Rivera. They were played by Matt Drudge.
Oh, wow.
But I want them to see them currently to understand just how bad it is, our dual system of justice, how people like the Clintons could get away with crimes and not be held accountable. I did get a court to rule that Bill Clinton committed a crime. That was in a civil context. But these people need to be prosecuted and need to be put away. Look, this woman who was just pardoned for possession of drugs, I forget her name by the president yesterday.
Oh, yeah,
the right
Kim
thing for him to do.
Kardashian's friend.
Yeah, and very compassionate. She did 20 years.
Whoa.
And, if you compare that to what the Clintons and Barack Obama and John Brennan and James Clapper and James Comey and the others did, what a travesty.
Right.
And you have to believe that, African Americans have a point frequently when they say that they're being persecuted and the white guys go free. It's really an issue.
Right. So people can see those videos at freedomwatchusa.org/videos. So that's pretty easy to find. And there's quite a lot of videos here. So that's a lot of information for people to dig into. Larry, I hope this isn't a ridiculous suggestion, but is there any way that I could assist in negotiating some sort of détente between yourself and Judicial Watch? Because I think you guys could really be powerful together.
No, it's too far gone, Jason. I mean, Fitton's an egomaniac. I'm saying that straight up. Okay, he always feared me, and he didn't want to be in my shadow. So I've been fighting with him now for 15 years.
Wow.
I wish it would end. I've tried to end it, but it's become a cult of personality, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. But I do wish you luck in the pursuits of freedomwatchusa.org. Larry, is there anything else you wanted to share with the audience before we wrap it up for tonight? I know it's getting a little late over there.
No, I would just say, Jason, stay tuned. We have to keep punching in a legal way. We need to use Freedom Watch. We look forward to your support. This is not just a commercial, but I do bring hard-hitting cases, and I'm willing to take risks for the good of the country. And we need people behind us. So please contribute to our cause. We need the contributions. We need the moral support. And I thank you because I can say things on Crowdsource the Truth that you can't say on the various networks. And it needs to be said. It needs to be said straight up because it's a lot worse than what you see on Fox News. And thank God for Fox News, but it only takes it so far. You're performing a very valuable function.
Thank you, Larry. And I appreciate you being on the show. You're performing a valuable function by sharing your expertise with us and giving us these great insights. And as you say, I really want to implore the people watching that if you value the information that Crowdsource the Truth is bringing you, it's really important that people become sponsors, either by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or making a one-time sponsorship payment with paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. We are coming under heavy fire. Everyone's heard about this civil suit, this rather frivolous lawsuit that's been brought against us that has virtually no evidentiary value, in which the lawyer for the plaintiff has basically admitted that they've committed charity fraud. Absolutely unbelievable, but it still has to be dealt with. It takes time. Haven't hired a lawyer, and I'm trying to avoid that because that's what these guys want to do, is drain me financially. So if you want to fight that, it's important that you become a sponsor. Larry, I look forward to our next meeting, and
Me too.
I will speak to you very soon, my friend. Have a great evening, and thank you for everything you're doing.
You too. God bless, my good friend.
Take care. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks for watching.